All right, YouTube. An Egypt Air flight en route from Paris to Cairo was came down. It went off radar. At first, they speculated, well, it just crashed into the ocean, it depressurized suddenly or something. Now they're saying that it was probably a terrorist attack. It was probably brought down by something fired from the ground or the sea or whatever. Which makes sense considering the area of the world in which it came down in is not far from an active area of ISIS operation. Keep in mind, any sort of anti-air systems they have were likely given to them by the FSA, and anything similar that the FSA has was almost certainly given to them by Barack Hussein Obama. We know this, it's common knowledge. The FSA works in partnership with ISIS. They have no real problem with them. They don't really fight one another. They're too busy fucking with Assad and the Iraqis. And all of this stuff Obama continues to give them ends up in the hands mostly of ISIS because they're better at fighting, honestly. There are more of them. And really, the FSA doesn't want to piss them off because if they get on the ISIS shit list, then they end up getting their heads lopped off. Or they end up getting dissolved in nitric acid like the last batch of people that they had captured. Or something terrible like that. So the FSA weaklings in Syria that want a local Islamic Sharia state, an Islamo-fascist state, are essentially just now a pawn of an international caliph movement, which is ISIS, the Islamic State. Also called Daesh or a million other names. It's impossible to choose which one that Obama will use next because he's fucking retarded. But yeah, I mean, the plane was almost certainly brought down by terrorists, but here's the catch. Because it would be inconvenient going into a general election for the Democratic Party to have their sitting president implicated in supplying a weapon that was used to down an Egyptian aircraft full of French people right outside of the Sinai Peninsula, you're probably not going to get to hear about that for quite some time. Even if it's cut and dry, they find the wreckage floating around or on the seashore somewhere. There's a big-ass hole in it that was obviously caused by some sort of missile strike or something like that. You're not going to get to hear about it. They'll cover it up. The Egyptians will be more than happy to do that. Obama will send them a shipment of cocaine or something, and they'll just shut right up, and they'll wait for another year or so until after the election in hopes of maintaining the good graces of some American people towards fear Hillary Clinton. You can be damn sure that that's what they're going to do. I would be very surprised if they come out and you're not just hearing from RT and some foreign news sources that it was a terrorist attack when it becomes clear that it was one. And it will almost certainly become clear. That's, as they themselves said, that is more obviously a likely cause than, oh, it was systems failure. Oh, they just depressurized suddenly. Oh, the pilot downed a pint of vodka, just got a little too drunk and banked it and ended up in the ocean or something. No, it was probably an explosive of some sort. Another possibility, of course, is it was an explosive already on board. They said the Germans and the French have both sort of ignored the fact that there are people on, like, I guess, some sort of terrorist watch list working in their airports. That seems like a great idea to me. I'm sure that Joe Schmo, the janitor, keeping a half an eye on these people is enough to make sure they're not going to sneak an explosive aboard. I'm sure, and the fact that it was full of French people, it was just coming back from Paris, just makes it all that much more conspicuous, because ISIS really has a stick up its ass about the French for bombing a few of their key positions and pretending that they were actually mad a while ago. You saw what happened in the Paris attacks. The Parisians are like, oh, well, it's time to water the furrow of our fields with our enemy's blood. And, of course, the French government didn't actually do that. It ran a few sorties here and there, kind of partnered with the Jordanians a little, and that's basically all it's been doing. But that doesn't mean it hasn't perturbed ISIS, because remember, they're getting all sorts of freebies from the FSA that we ourselves are repeatedly arming. They're getting money, they're getting manpower, they're getting training, they're getting all sorts of lethal and non-lethal equipment. They've got anti-air systems, they've got anti-tank systems, they've got it all. They've got a fully functioning military. They've even got, like, aircraft sometimes that they can sort of maintain and kind of get to work from time to time. And this is Obama's Middle East. It's really almost as big a disaster as when Bush marched in the first place, displaced the Iraqi government, and Al-Qaeda swooped in and said, oh, well, it's IUD time. IED time. I think that it'll be great. We'll just make these little copper rings and fire them out, and it'll just rip an APC apart. They had a grand old time, and we finally sort of squished them down. Then we withdrew and said, oh, everything's fine, and destabilized their neighbor. Yeah, that was a brilliant move. But no, it was almost certainly terrorism. Let's not mince words here. It's more likely than any of the alternatives. It's more likely than the pilot just fucking stroked out, the co-pilot was asleep. It's more likely than everything suddenly depressurized and just sort of exploded in the air. It's probably more likely that it was brought down by something on the ground or out in shallow seas than it was brought down by something already on board, but that remains a possibility. The fact is that both of the main possibilities both involve terrorism specifically linked to ISIS, and Obama's the one that almost certainly supplied whatever they were using for this. If it was fired from the ground or fired from sea, it was definitely an FSA weapon. It wasn't something ISIS just concocted on their own, hitting something several tens of thousands of feet up in the air. I don't fucking think so. But again, you'll hear about it from like RT and Al Jazeera and maybe like BBC or something, but you're not going to hear it from the American media. They'll all cover for his ass. They'll cover for the Democratic Party, because it would be real inconvenient if the Democratic frontrunner right now were directly sort of linked to that period in Syria and Iraq and the missteps that were taken there under a president who didn't really know what he was doing, left another power vacuum in the area right next to Iraq, and caused more problems than he ever solved. Even if his heart was in the right place, let's give Obama 1,000 times more credit than he deserves. Assume that he's just naive and he meant well. It's still his fucking problem. He's still the one that caused the problems going on right now in Syria, and he's continuing what he's doing. He doesn't appear to understand the fact that these weapons he's giving to the FSA and the money and so forth are just ending up in the hands of ISIS. This flight could very well have been brought down by some weapon that he gave the FSA a year ago. Well, that's just peachy keen. I'm sure that'll be good for U.S.-French relations, U.S.-Egyptian relations. I'm sure that will be just fine. That's about all. Peace out.